we're now going to take you on a journey towards net zero. And we are going to start with Icebreaker One and its partnership with Bankers for Net Zero Project Perseus. What commitments are financial services companies making to help reach their climate goals? And how do these measures contribute to making the world better for all? And how are fintechs playing a key role in reshaping climate goal measurements? To look at this, I'm thrilled to welcome founder and CEO of Icebreaker One, Gavin Starks, in conversation with Stephen Dury, who's the VP of Innovation, FinTech Strategy and Sustainability at Capgemini.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully we've got your attention after coffee, a bit of caffeine this afternoon. We've got 10 minutes, and I've got quite an ambitious task to bring you up to speed with Project Perseus. And by way of context, this morning we heard about open banking and how the UK is leading the market globally. It is a reference point for how to stand up an open banking, open payments, open data infrastructure that people can have confidence and they can trust in. Now take that to the next stage and start to look at open energy, open everything. And what Icebreaker One are doing, what Bankers for Net Zero are doing, and what Project Perseus is setting out to do is set that new standard as a reference point for many markets to look at. And what I'm going to look to do in the next 9 to 10 minutes is give you a bit of insight as to how Gavin and the team are approaching that. So what's very interesting about Project Perseus for me is it started with a customer problem, very clear customer problem. And that sits in the SME market and the challenge of standardizing and simplifying reporting emissions for SMEs. So with that as a kickoff point, Gavin, can you talk people through what sits behind Project Perseus and what you're aiming to achieve?
Thank you. Absolutely. And I think that the starting point here is we face a crisis in trust. Everybody's being swamped with different carbon reporting standards and ESG requirements. They have a huge number of things that they now have to report against, and it's incredibly onerous and confusing. So what we wanted to do was try and automate carbon reporting for every SME in the country. That's 5.9 million companies. And the blueprint we're building upon is open banking. I was fortunate to co-chair the development of open banking back in 2015 and been heavily involved in its development. At Icebreaker One, over the last 3 years, we've developed Open Energy as a non-profit service to connect all this information. So it comes back to the user needs. One of the user needs here is the banks, not just the banks, but lots of others, but we're going to start with the banks, have a mandatory reporting requirement for all their financed emissions. So they need to go out and get data from everybody. But everybody at the other end of that, from the SME perspective, doesn't have the time or money to go and engage in that question. So we wanted to start with, can we do one thing well and get electricity information directly from the smart meters at 30-minute resolution, with its carbon intensity at the time and place of use, right the way through the chain into organizations like Sage and Intuit and Kogo and other carbon solutions, and from there to the accountants, and from there to the banks within a trusted framework that is similar to open banking. So that's the scale of ambition. It's not a small program, but can we do it at national scale? And then from there, how do we scale even that to a larger ecosystem?
What's fascinating about that is the opportunity that creates for innovation, because when you get that transparency of data between the energy sector and the financial services sector, you can begin to think about how that transforms the way you approach developing new products. So it's not just about trying to extend funding and facilities to small businesses to help them manage their supply chain or transform the way they consume energy or deliver and develop their products. Suddenly you can start designing those products and services in a way that gives you insight into how it's changing the consumption of energy, and therefore support with things like Scope 3 reporting, Scope 3 emissions. Now, with that, I think it brings a whole different perspective on how it drives innovation in the sector. But to achieve what you're setting out to do at the moment, it requires not just collective interest, but collective action. And it requires that action to happen across a whole multitude of trade bodies, brands, across several sectors. How are you going about doing that, and what type of challenges have you faced?
So we're very fortunate to have partnered with Bankers for Net Zero, which sits underneath the Net Zero Banking Alliance, underneath GFANZ and UNFI. And working together, we've brought together a steering group at the head of this that has over a dozen trade associations, including UK Finance, including Innovate Finance, the Federation of Small Businesses, and lots of others, as well as the Department for Energy and Security and Net Zero, and the Cabinet Office. So at that high level, we've brought together everybody who might want to have an opinion on this. We're even more fortunate that at the implementation level, we've now got about 20 commercial partners, including the banks, so NatWest, HSBC, Tide Bank, Alica Bank, at the table, helping us work this program through, alongside the accounting applications and alongside other stakeholders in this whole ecosystem. And the outcome we want to get to is this assurable data flow through the entire ecosystem to automate Scope 2 as a starting point. So the key thing here is it's actually a really boring job at one level of plumbing. Can we get the technical plumbing done? Can we get the legal plumbing done? And that's the biggest single challenge. What are the policy implications of that? And then how do we communicate what this whole program is about and what benefits it will bring to everybody in the mix? So in order to go far together, we need to bring together this quite substantial set of stakeholders and manage dozens and dozens of different relationships in order that we can do one thing well. And that's the starting point of Perseus.
And it's brilliant to be able to build on the experiences that have been delivered off the back of open banking, because the growing scale and engagement you're seeing there from SMEs and consumers is building that confidence and the experience of consenting access to the data. So with your experience of open banking, how is that playing into the ability to deliver this one thing well into the market? And are you getting the kind of support you want in terms of communicating that message out there?
We're getting there. I'd say we launched at Parliament 3 months ago. Right? So that was very rapid and over the summer. We are launching a demonstrator at COP this year, which is in about 8 weeks. It feels about 8 minutes away. And here, like I say, this is the beginning of a journey, and the lessons learned from the development of open banking are writ large in this. One, building multi-stakeholder teams to work out what all the challenges are going to be and working them through. It's all very well having a theory of change, but having an implementation of change takes 10 times the amount of effort, at least. So addressing some of the legal challenges, creating the legal basis for data sharing, making sure the SMEs are protected. You know, one of the lenses here I have on the whole carbon reporting space is it's a bit like putting a CCTV camera in the middle of an SME. If you're getting 30-minute energy data, you can tell pretty much everything about their business from that. So there needs to be protections around this raw information flow right the way through the chain. And at the other side of that, where you're getting reporting, creating and then consumed by the credit rating agencies and the banks and so on, they need to have confidence that the reports they're getting are accurate. And we're seeing people shy away from publishing data because they either don't believe it, or they don't trust it, or they're worried about the liability that it comes with. So right the way through this process, we're gathering people together to say, what are the rules of the game? So there's a collaboration around the rules of the game so that people can then compete on the analytics. So one of the ways of thinking about this is a bit like open banking. We're not creating a massive central database. We're creating the framework, the trust framework, that allows everybody to share data within a secure and robust environment.
Which is a fantastic achievement in a really short space of time, but it does show the power of building on standards and principles that have already been well established in the market. Because that's the trust and the experience engagement, as we've seen since the CMA investigation, that triggered the accelerated implementation of PSD2 and open banking in the UK. That understanding has enabled consumers and businesses to get that much more confidence. So I'm seeing the screen beginning to get to the point where we're going to have to wrap up in a second. So I guess there's a few key messages for everyone to hear and remember today. That leveraging open banking and open data to trigger a project like Project Perseus is going to pioneer an approach that enables a whole different set of innovation to land to support SMEs with carbon emission reporting. It's going to simplify the approach and the engagement. And again, it's going to push the UK into a position where it creates the foundation and an opportunity for other markets to look at fintech in the UK and the way the sector works together to really transform and deliver completely new outcomes that achieve much better things for the planet, for consumers and businesses, and for all those participants that are part of the market. So, Gavin, just before we do wrap up, what is the most important thing for people to know before the end of this year in terms of your ambitions for COP?
I think the key thing is, from my perspective, and obviously I would say this, I think this is one of the most ambitious programs in the country for addressing net zero, because the outcome should be easy access to green capital for SMEs and lower risk for the banks to deliver that at scale. So my one call to action is just get involved. This is an open collaboration. Icebreaker One is a non-profit. We're here to help coordinate many, many different opinions and bring them all to the fore. So help us accelerate, because the time for theory is over.
Gavin, thank you very much. Thanks for your attention this afternoon.